Okay. It looks like we are live.
That's 51 persons in pre-live.
In pre-live. Okay, yeah, so it's actually
Live and
it's
people are
working.
waiting. Yeah.
It is working, thankfully. So I suppose we'll give it a couple of minutes before we crack on to give people an opportunity to join. So, yeah, we'll wait a couple of minutes. But for those who have already joined, welcome. Thank you so much for signing up and attending. If you are at work, yeah, keep it on in the background. Don't tell your boss. Should be a good one. Okay, let's give it another minute and then we'll kick things off with some introductions. By the way, for those listening today, if you do have to jump out at any point, this will be recorded and will be streamed on our Nordics Evolution Exchange podcast, which you can find links to after this. We'll send an email, we'll pop it in the comments and stuff like that. So if for any reason you can either want to re-listen to stuff, if you want to hear stuff again, or you've not got time today, feel free to jump onto the podcast later and you can listen to it again. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's kick things off. So welcome everyone. My name's Chris Bennett. I'm the Nordics Managing Director here at Evolution. We've been working in the Nordic region now for the last 5 years, and we have a passion of adding value to the Danish community by setting up podcasts, webinars, such as these. We do keep the lights on. I know, ironically, the lights aren't on behind me, but we do keep the lights on by providing amazing freelancers such as these people today. And so, yeah, if you are interested in getting in touch, feel free to get in touch. Today we're discussing freelancing. We've got an agenda already. We've got some questions we're going to go through with the panel. However, you do have the option on the right-hand side to send us some questions, and I will endeavour to get through them with our awesome panel. So let's get started. Introductions. Robert.
Yes, my name is Robert. I am a freelance data engineer. I've been working in the data industry for, I think, close to 6-7 years now. As a freelancer for the last close to 5. I am from the Netherlands, but I moved to Denmark about 5 years ago. First to Copenhagen, and now I live on the west coast in a small town called Klipmøller, together with my girlfriend and our dog. And besides freelancing or working, I like to enjoy nature, go for a surf in the ocean, and I guess that's pretty much it.
I never thought about Denmark and surfing. Didn't see him. So really interesting that.
Yeah.
Different webinar. We'll have to go into that in a different webinar. Okay, Sonny.
Yeah, my name is Sonny. I've been working in the internet industry for like 25 years or more. As a freelancer, I also worked fixed positions, but the past 5 years or more, I've been working on contract basis as like freelance consultant. I'm a full stack developer. Back in the early days, it was like old school front end and various types of back end, like PHP, stuff like that. But the past years, it's been purely React and Node.js. I've been working with for different companies. So, started a new contract as a lead developer for a pharmaceutical company called Zoetis. And yeah, this is what I do.
Awesome. Cheers for that, Sonny. They'll probably, by the end of this webinar, there'll probably be two new JavaScript frameworks that have been brought out in that time. Okay, and over to Jakob.
Yeah, I'm Jakob. I've been working in the IT sector as a developer for roughly 22 years. Started in the small companies by product development, and then in the mid zeros, I started working as a consultant, and I've been working as a consultant since then. 1st of January 16, up to that, I decided to go freelance due to personal reasons. And I've been doing that since, primarily working on the Microsoft platform as a developer, DevOps, whatever. But that said, I've worked on a lot of different web-based platforms because that's been my main purpose.
Perfect. Cheers for that, Jakob. And finally, Nikolai.
Yeah, I'm Nikolai. I'm 52 years old. I've been doing freelancing for like 20 years. I live in Copenhagen and have 2 kids. My task is mostly full stack development on the Microsoft stack, including some Asia, also some of the DevOps from Asia. It seems to hit us all. Sometimes I've also had a few contracts as a technical lead, where I kind of manage developers. And all my projects are, most of them, I must say, is very large customers, and a lot of them are return customers. So relationships I had for quite a few years. So yeah, that will be me.
Awesome. Okay, so a lot of our listeners today might be freelancers. They might be people looking to freelance, and so hopefully this session will cater for all those needs. So let's go around the table, I suppose. Robert, why did you get into freelancing?
I think for me, I started working as a consultant at a consulting firm in data and analytics. And even though I liked the work a lot and I had a good company to work for, I think I noticed that often I would be sent out to a client individually anyway. And at 2.5 years, I was kind of thinking, I like this independence, and I think I can also do it myself. So a bit optimistic, but thought, well, maybe that's something worth pursuing, and it gives me the benefits of working in some sort of consulting type role, but more independent and being able to decide on my own kind of path and which way I want to go.
How did was it? Did you kind of have any agreements with the consultancy in terms of which customers you could work for, or were they okay you leaving as a freelancer and almost approaching their clients?
It's a bit of a funny story because at the time I did not have any competition clauses in my contracts, so I could kind of do whatever. And actually also ended up, my first contract was at a client I worked for as a consultant, which made the step a bit easier because you kind of know each other, and kind of getting into freelancing was that by doing so a bit easier. But yeah, I don't think that's the most common, so I think I was a bit lucky to have that freedom in my consulting contract.
Yeah. Sonny, how did you get into freelancing?
I started when I was in university, and instead of the usual student jobs, I just started my own personal business and started freelancing there. Also, I got an offer I couldn't turn down, but it's been on off with the freelancing since. The last years has been a lot through brokers and agencies, which also has worked really great for me, I must say. The reason is sorry.
What I was going to say, kind of, what was the reason you kind of flipped between full time roles and freelancing?
Well, to full time, it was because I got an offer I couldn't say no to. It's like I was offered for the telecommunication team to start their own business for doing websites for businesses. So I built up that department. It was like a lot of fun to do and gave me a lot of experience. But the freelancing I like mainly because of the freedom that you have, which Robert also mentioned. I've been working a lot remote and traveling. I just came from 5 months in Mexico where I was working for different companies here in Denmark. So it's the freedom, I think, and also that you get a lot of challenges compared to a fixed position where you work for several years. As a freelancer or a consultant, you get thrown into a project often when deadlines are hard to reach or they have specific problems or so it's not well.
Perfect. Jakob, when did you make the step?
Actually, I decided when I was 25 I needed to work freelance, but for many different reasons I didn't. Since 2003 I had a company next to my regular job due to something that just happened, and I got an option to work for them also. But when back in 2015, I realized a pattern about myself. When I've worked in a company for a long time and I give a specific assignment, at some point it sounds wrong that I'm getting tired of it, but the challenge disappears. And second, there's a lot of office politics, and there's a lot of things with management. And when you work in a specific kind of company, they expect you to go to the next management level all the time. And during a really, really stressful situation, my wife looked at me and said something has to change. So I decided to, okay, of course, I'll just go freelance. And I was so, no, that's not my primary way out of this. But I talked with, I was teaching karate. I'm a second degree black belt, and I was teaching a lot of kids. And one of the kids' parents actually had a big IT company inside in Copenhagen. So I talked to him, and he knew me through the years from teaching, and he said, "Okay, you can start at us." So I got my first 6-month contract there, and then it just followed along. And I'm keep doing it primarily due to the freedom we have. It's not without challenges being a freelance. Just to be fair enough, as Sonny said, he just worked in Mexico and he can work from afar, and that's fine. But primarily, it's because I don't have to fight with office politics. Of course, sometimes you can be, the more you are embedded in the project and the more important you become in this given project, you will feel the office politics, but not in the same way as when you are a fixed employee. And that's my main reason for staying freelance.
I think your main reason is because the missus told you to do it.
Sometimes she's actually saying, couldn't you find a regular fixed position? But no fucking way.
We should have brought her on.
No.
Nikolai, when did you make the move? Why did you make the move?
Oh, it's so far ago. I can't remember when, 20 something years, but I remember the reason. I remember that I was working with a consultancy house, and then we were bought by a larger enterprise, and then we all needed new contracts. And one of the things that happened was that they added a competitive clause to our contract. And that was actually the day when I started, because now I really had to make a decision. I think, as Jacob mentioned, that you can be, should I do it, should I not do it? But for me, that was very clear that I had a competitive clause in front of me. If I didn't sign it, I would be released. So I just had to make the decision. So that's actually the reason why I got into freelancing.
Well, so they'd change your contract?
Yeah, they actually, if they were buying the company I was in, and then they made new employee contracts for everyone. I think that's pretty common. And in that part of that process was a new competitive clause. And I always wanted to, at some point, have my own company. So I just knew that if I did this would just be a mess further down the road. So I kind of had to make a decision. And you have to remember, this is because before there was any money attached to the competitive clause. So at this point, you could just add the competitive clause, and the employee was kind of under this contract. I think today you have to pay for it if you have a competitive clause, but I'm not quite sure how it works.
Okay. Various reasons there. So I suppose back to you, Robert. What do you like about it?
Yeah, I think it's a bit what others already touched upon as well, as kind of having the freedom to decide a bit more for your own kind of future in your career. So for me, for example, I would like to move more into your cloud environment, and I decide to do that, and then start kind of trying to find jobs in there, certifying myself. There's no need for somebody to decide that for me. Of course, it also means you get a bit less support from people with more experience, but I think there's other avenues to do that as well. So there's a freedom of choice, and I think another part that I really like is that because freelance contracts are usually, at least for me, 3 to 6 months. Every 3 to 6 months, you have to redefine: am I happy with what I'm doing? Do I want to continue? And so, if you get extended, right, like assuming, it puts you in like a reflective mode of: am I still happy with what I'm doing right now? Yes. Okay, cool. I can extend. No. Why is that? And why am I not happy with this? So it gives you, I know, a good way to self-reflect on what you want to get out of your work, and whether you're happy on like a reoccurring basis.
For those people there that are listening to you going, oh, quite stressful every 3 to 6 months doing that, what would the answer to them be?
I mean, it definitely depends on your risk appetite in terms of, okay, am I comfortable that I might not have a job in 3 to 6 months? So I think for me, there was more an issue when you just start out, because, maybe you don't have really something saved up in the bank yet, or it's a bit more like, okay, how much runway do I have? But I think there is something where you kind of want to go through your own situation. Okay, how much leeway do I have financially? Like, if I don't find a job for 3 months, then what? And for me, I think my cost level when I started freelancing and still now is fairly low. So I know, okay, worst case scenario, if it takes 6 to 9 months, I'll still be fine. I might to go down on some luxuries, but I know that I can be comfortable living and not having to sell my house. So kind of knowing, okay, what are the potential risks down the road if I don't get a job? That gives me a lot of confidence. Okay, this is fine. And then a second part is, I think, during kind of going to freelance and during my first year of freelancing, I also got contacted by some recruiters who were asking for full-time positions as well. So I also knew that the work I'm doing is fairly in demand. So there is a plan B, right? You can potentially go back to a full-time employment. That way, kind of kick things off again.
Sonny, what is it about freelancing that you enjoy?
Well, I think which I said before, I think it's the freedom. I say this is the most important thing. And that, Robert says that you can pretty much kick your own direction, how you want to take it, and what kind of projects you want to work on, technologies and stuff like that. So I think these are the two key points. I think, and the challenges that you are thrown into some things that are fun, actually.
Okay. Jakob, slightly moving on, because I think Nikolai and Jakob mentioned in the previous answer about kind of what you like about freelancing. So feel free to add anything. But Jakob, how do you integrate yourself into a team as a freelancer?
Oh, that's a difficult one.
Robert just said, I don't.
To be fair, I've seen a lot of people starting in a team. Now I'm just saying what I've seen, and then I will say what I'm doing.
Right,
They're
okay.
starting in a team, trying to position themselves somewhere and showing the rest of us how good they are. Normally, for my part, when I started a team, I'm there for a specific reason, or they need something, for a broader term, that can fix something over here. That's a general job description, fix something over here. I have a pretty slow approach. I start figuring out what are the people I'm working with. I'm not the person who comes in the first day and say, you need to do this, this, and this for this shit to work. I know people that does that. It's not me. For me, it's just figuring out how is the internal team dynamics with the other developers, the management, and so on. Are there any processes that doesn't work or actually do work? Because just because I have an opinion, it's not the same as something else doesn't work. So that's the only thing that's important for me, to start up slow in a team, not being me not working, but me actually figuring out what is the right place for me in the team, where can I actually add value. And if you just bulldoze over it, that's not how I find it anyways.
Yeah.
So I hope it answered the question.
No, yeah. So I mean, really, you're saying making sure you're humble in that at the start of the contract. What about you, Nikolai? What's your experience of integrating into teams as a freelancer, and how do you like to do it?
I pretty much feel that I do the same as Jacob is mentioning. I'm not sure everyone that I've been on a project will agree on me. It depends a little on the deadline. I mean, because most of the reason when I have like two different kind of projects, the projects that is long running, and then those where there's a deadline approaching very fast. That's actually, I don't know why, but it tends to that when there's a deadline coming up, people tend to be more interested into hiring some freelancers to help them to get the deadline. That kind of put a little pressure on the method, but learning the team dynamics and then also learning about what kind of expertise is in the team, because we always think development is just development, but there's so many things around the development that I actually do spend some time matching out which of my competences will give the most effect to the project. often there's, for example, the last project we have a little miss in the DevOps where we're missing some expertise. So I spent some time learning more about that to make my, how to set effort into the team. Another thing I would like to mention about why I like freelancing, it's a little about the load on me as a developer. When I'm a developer and I do all my, or mostly of my projects based on times, on hourly invoicing, when we get into those crunch period, it's so much easier to be a freelancer compared to be an employee. At least that's my experience. Because when I'm a freelancer, I know that I will get paid. If I work for 14 hours a day, I will get paid for 14 hours. That is actually could be some tough with the rest of the team because they don't get paid that much. They don't get like 2 days of pay for 1 day works. And this actually makes it much easier for me to handle the load that I has on me and to reaching the deadline. But sometimes I just have to crunch it, but I know I'll get paid for it. So I don't have to have all this discussion I had so many times when I was an employee.
It's a fantastic point. That fantastic point. Robert, how do you how do you choose your contracts?
I think like the last contracts I've gotten is usually a recruitment firm or like a broker reaching out with some sort of job description. So I think the first shift is, okay, does this profile is my profile something that actually matches that you're looking for? From there, for me, it's a lot of it based on feeling. So do I have a good feeling with the company that I'm talking to? Do I have a feeling that the broker in between is aware of what they're actually asking for? That's, I think, especially in data analytics, and maybe in IT in general, I just don't have the experience in just the other areas. A data engineer can mean many different things depending on what company you ask. And it can be fairly platform specific as well, what it means, what your skills are. So a company can ask for a data engineer and one can ask for a database administrator, and they're actually asking for the same thing. So making a shift in terms of, okay, I need to understand first what kind of profile they're looking for. So they're not going to get disappointed because somehow there's a mismatch in expectations somewhere in the process. And then I think personally, I like to work in organizations where I can be part of a team, rather than, hey, you are the external expert, come on over here, tell us how to do it, and then we'll do that. I like to be a team player. I like to involve myself in projects where there's usually more than a single person contributing. So back to the feeling about, I want to have a good feeling I'm working with. So ideally have a chat with a manager in the team, maybe another developer or another engineer in the team, and take it from there.
So going back to your first comment, so when these brokers are reaching out, is this on LinkedIn yourself?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, 95%. It's all LinkedIn.
And so are you consciously aware that you should always be looking at LinkedIn? Like, listen, all four of you will get 1,000 messages from 1,000 versions of me. Yeah. How you like filtering through that stuff? Like, what's kind of your trigger points? Is it an interesting job description? Is it someone you know? Are you always kind of replying? How do you kind of navigate that?
For me, my approach is I try to talk to everybody that reaches out, because I am my own business. I need to find a client at some point. So I want to make sure that that happens, and that I keep in touch with people who are working in the industry and looking for people like myself. So that is my main approach. And what separates, to me, good brokers from the ones that are a bit more mediocre or a bit worse is the ones that take a bit more of a personal approach, a bit more time to kind of get to know you, rather than, here I am shooting a profile at 100 people and hopefully 2 or 3 will respond. It doesn't make me feel good about my position. It doesn't make me feel good about having to talk. So, I'd rather have a couple of good relationships coming out of, having talked to many people at the beginning, rather than, then be in a lot of databases around and be somewhere where you can be reached out to. a bunch of times.
Sonny, how do you kind of choose your contracts?
Well, it's also based on, I mean, usually you get to talk to the team itself and stuff like that, and the gut feeling of it. And also what's important for me is to know that there is time to get thoroughly into the project, which means, for instance, take an example, a couple of times I worked for like a web agency, not the end client, like TDC or something like, but an agency that is doing something for large scale companies. These companies, agencies, they will only hire a consultant or a freelancer if shit hits the fan. They will not do it otherwise. They're not making any money out of your resources. So it's like the deadline is here, and they hire you, and then when you have the deadline coming up, that close. For onboarding, there's no time for anything, so it's not just it's just a very bad situation to be in. So that is something I always say no to. I never take those things. What I also go for is I mean, for the fun of it, some things that I haven't tried before or new things, challenging learning experiences as well.
Okay. What about you, Jakob? How are you choosing your contracts?
I'm fairly uncritical, to be fair. As long as it's inside my CV range, and I think I can manage, I will take it. The only thing I've started to be skeptical about is, as Sonny said, sometimes you work for a client that's hired you in from a consultant agency that hired in from a different consultant agency, and so on. When you get into this 4th, 5th level, I don't want to work there. I primarily want to be directly to my client or through one consultant agency, because then I have the distance where I can actually talk and do a difference. Just to be fair, I've been in a contract where they were so busy, and then I worked there for 3 weeks, and then suddenly they didn't have any more work for me. I had 3 days left. I had 3 months left of the contract, but they only gave me 3 days because their end client decided to push the deadline for the project 6 months. So I started in Monday. I came in the office Monday, and then the PM asked me if I had 5 minutes. I said yes, of course. And then he told me the client decided to push the deadline. And then I ended up in a match between the client and the broker. They have a different contract, and I had a small paragraph that said actually the client decides the working hours, and they didn't cancel my contract. They just decided I should work 0 hours a day.
Oh man.
I have some words about
I don't know
that,
if we can swear on LinkedIn Live, but
yeah,
I feel like swearing.
and I'm not working with that consultant agency anymore because
No.
I honestly find that it's a way of fucking with people, to be fair. But that's the only time I've actually experienced it. So
Yeah. Okay.
So the only thing, if I feel okay with the people I talk to, I can join the contract. Otherwise, it's normally for 3 months, and then I can find something else.
Yeah.
That's one of the big advantages of working as a freelance.
What about you, Nikolai?
I would actually like to add that there's important part of this is that when you have the freelancing contract, you have to make sure that you build up some savings, so you don't get very hungry for new contracts. I think it's my basic rule is that if you have a year full contract, you should have 2 months savings after that year, because otherwise you will end up, and if you're too hungry, you will not be able to reject the things that isn't good. So I think that's really important. Regarding the contracts and how you choose the contracts, I would say I do most of mine by networking, talking with people I have worked with before, and then, to be honest, also pricing. I mean, if I have a couple of different contracts, I could use pricing to select which one of them I should work on by simply raising the price of one of the contracts and see if it gets through. I know it's probably a little, I don't know if everyone likes to talk about it, but pricing is a part of it. And one of the reasoning why being a freelancer is that you get a better price than if you're employed. So as long as you remember to do your savings, that could actually be a pretty good thing from that point of view as well. And you get to negotiate your wages for every contract. Jacob want to add something?
Yeah, I want to add something. And it's really, as you said, we get a bigger salary than a regular 9 to 5 employee. That said, we are also taking a way bigger risk. Just to be fair,
Totally agree.
for many cases, in most of us can probably go out and find a 9 to 5 job if everything fucks up. But as you said, Nikolai, you have to have a savings. You say 2 months, I say 6 months. And if anyone here in the list are considering starting as a freelance, you have to be aware that if you start on the 1st of January, you will not get any money before 1st of March at the earliest, depending on your contract. And a lot of people are missing that part, but we're sending an invoice after 30 days and then we'll get our money. Yeah, but you will send the invoice. You'll work for free, in principle, 30 days. You will send an invoice and then hopefully you'll get the money when your invoice deadline is over. And some companies actually have 90 days. So depending on where you want to start, you need to have some savings in your private account.
I'm not going to miss a sales. I'm not going to miss a sales opportunity. We would pay on the 28th of February, there, Jacob. Yes, every time, insured, no problems. Robert, you were going to add something.
Yeah, just to add on what Jacob was saying, but I've my first contract. There was also something with that was in the Netherlands, so it's not that relevant for Denmark specifically, but it was about being delayed. But there was something where the Dutch tax authorities and the company who would pay me out, they were in disagreement about how the contract would work. So even though the company I freelance for, they were like, yeah, we're good. Broker in between that said we have to figure this out with the tax authorities first, and then it was me. And in the end, it took I think close to 4 or 5 months before getting paid. And it was a big organization, like a multinational company. It wasn't their fault necessarily, but there was just a company in between, and it had to go through them because that was the rule of the multinational. Like they only do contracts through this intermediary. And the intermediary said, hey, we need to figure out something tax-wise first. So it's on hold. And then you get, that can get tricky because not only do you have to wait quite a while, but also like if you would stop and find a new project, then used to that 3-month cycle Jacob's talking about. If it's the 1st of January, there's nothing before the 1st of March you're sitting onto your account. So it gives big peace of mind to do have like a long runway.
In that, go on,
I'm a little bit. Yeah, I'm a little bit curious. Do you have 3 months payment method? Do you have like 3 months? Because I have the offer or the suggesting a few times, and I always rejected it, not because of the 3 months actually, but the problem is if there's any kind of disagreement, I will not be able to resolve that until there's 4 months of work. Then I have 4 months of work in the line. So actually, a few times I just had to stop the work and said, if you're not paying, then of course I will stop working, and then my risk all take 3 months.
So just lost you there, Nikolai. Say that last bit again.
I was just, if you're working with a payment condition that they will pay 3 months after you've done the work, then if there's any disagreement about the work or any disagreement about the payment or who should approve it internal in the organization or whatever is going on, you have a lot of work on the plate like that you're risking. So I have always said I will only risk a month of work, and that actually turns out to be almost 2 months because there's no risk. I mean, yeah, those things take time. So I'm just wondering if the other participants work with 3 months as a payment condition.
I don't.
I mean,
I've had one contract where I actually considered it because I wanted to work at that company in that given project. That's the only time I've actually said yes to it.
Okay.
Yeah, so for me, to be clear, like I didn't mean that there's a 3-month payment period, but more from the, I usually invoice after a full month of working, and then there's another month before the payment term is due. So meaning you get 2 months before you actually get paid, even though it's 2 months technically. And then I guess some companies might work with 90 days, or with 45 days or whatever, but it is still a bit of lag, of course, in between the first day you start work of a month and when that money comes back to you.
But Robert, in that scenario you talked about before, because we're supposed to be encouraging people to go freelancing, and the 5-month thing, was there anything you kind of learned from that, Robert, in terms of what you should be looking for in contracts to stop that scenario happening again, or at least being aware of it?
I moved to Denmark. There's
Move to
no,
Denmark.
it's
Okay.
no, it's.
Just
I
move
think
country.
it was because I think because in that scenario, so I worked for that company as a consultant and then as a freelancer, but as a what do you call, like an single person business. So like I didn't have my own APS, like you call them in Denmark.
Yeah.
So there was a tax issue that I don't think necessarily is an issue with freelancing. It was just that the company was worried about that for tax purposes, I would be considered an employee of the company rather than a
Right.
external consultant.
Yeah.
Which I think is a bit like specific to that scenario I was in, because it hasn't been an issue ever since afterwards. In regards to like what a contract, I kind of browsed through it, and if it seems all right to me, then I'm happy to do it. So in that sense, I put a bit of trust into a broker that they also kind of act in my best interest. But it might be optimistic, but so far, except for the first contract, everything went fine. I haven't had a case like Jacob had where there was a small clause that said, "Okay, now you're screwed." So a bit more specific to the next one I'm going to sign.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so
Can I have a small comment, Chris? Because there's a
absolutely,
lot
yeah.
of people like now. Robert mentioned the tax thing with SCAT, and a lot of people have asked about SCAT and companies and so on in the questions. Just to be fair, I am not an accountant. I'm not a legal advisor. I'm just saying that you cannot hold me into it. For the setup I have an APS where I actually am an employee myself. So my APS bills my client, and then I pay out a salary for me. But that's it. I just got a mail from SCAT 2 weeks ago regarding this setup because one of my brokers was actually been pulled in for investigation on this part. So just be aware, if you are having any doubts, call SCAT, get a binding answer, and work from there.
Okay.
And I talked to my current broker, and she said it's something really contract specific between me and the broker. And that's the big part of it. So, but again, I'm not an accountant. I'm not a law person, anything. I just
For
try
the
to do my
podcast, we're
best.
just going to cut those bits out where you
Yeah.
kind of.
Talk to SCAT. Talk to SCAT about it and get a binding answer. That's the best way to do it.
Good advice. Good advice. And you can speak to
How are
Jacob's
the
lawyer if you've got any issues.
how are the others set up company-wise? I'm actually curious about that as well. Sonny,
Nikolai, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I also have a setup with that Empart, et Empart-selskab, and I have an accountant who takes care of all that. I'm not good at it, so they know what to do. So I pay the yeah. That's where I'm definitely not cost effective, but I don't mind.
Sonny, what about yourself?
I have the same setup, like a holding company, APS, and all my clients goes through like the consulting firm that is below the holding company. I mean, it's because then you can also work on startup companies and stuff like that on the same time and just keep it separate. And for the salary things, I use this system called Denver, which is like takes care of a lot of these tax things for you and for your personal tax, and everything's pretty clear with that. Because this one problem when you start up as a freelancer is that you make substantially more money than you do on a normal contracts when you have a fixed position. For some people that can be a little bit difficult to handle, and as we say that you have to have a horizon that you have to be able to manage without income necessary as a freelancer. Then you have to set a standard. And my advice for this is find a level of a salary, just put that into a system like a Delta or whatever similar thing, and just run that and keep the rest in your company.
Okay.
Most freelancers are doing it a little bit the similar way after some years at least.
What was that company that you used? Denver, did you say?
Denver is like Denver is like that means salary. It's like a company where you can connect tax to an account, and you say, okay, I want to make this amount of money per month, and they take care of all the that you pay your tax, calculate, you should pay, and they know everything about it. So
I can recommend that
it's a
so
complex
much.
job.
It's so good. They take care of everything. It
Yeah,
works very
yeah,
flawless. Has done for many years.
yeah, yes,
I have
and
the,
it's
I
super
have the
cheap.
same. I actually started with the first thing I did with my company was to create an account, and then I'm using an accounting system and a bank where actually they are all integrated into my accounting system. So when I paid out my salary, I'll just push transfer to accounting system, and it goes into my accounting system, and my accounting can go and do the bookkeeping.
Yeah.
So
Okay. I'm going to move this conversation slightly on. So, speaking of money, how the hell do you decide your charge rates? Yeah, Nikolai, we'll go with you first. How do you work it out when you change it, like when you lower it? How do you work it out?
First of all, whenever I change my rate, I do it with a very, very long time of period to the customer. I have a few that is long running contracts,
Yeah.
and I make sure to send any changes so that they can have it in the next budget. That is
Yeah.
pretty important for me. Otherwise, it's slowly I'm trying it out. Honestly, I have someone attend me for a contract. I will just try to add on a little on top of my price, and then we'll see if it goes or not goes. And most of the times it goes actually. And actually, when and this was when I had a small startup. One of the first things the buyer did was to actually raise all prices, and nobody cared. We think pricing is so important for the customer, and of course it's important, but they also spend a lot of other costs into this project. So yeah, you have to try it out. And yeah, I don't have any golden rule. I mean, the one thing you cannot do, I can say, you cannot take your salary you would get as an employee and try to translate it into a freelance fee. That is definitely not the correct way to do it. You should kind of look at what the market expect. And by the way, do not always trust what the broker said that the price level is. Sometimes they are a little low.
Mm.
And I know Robert will add more. I can see that on your face.
Yeah, it's just I think it's a funny. I think one thing about working with a broker in terms of setting a rate is a bit tricky sometimes, because for me to set my rate, I have to know what the client eventually is paying for me, right? But there is a broker in between, and some are more transparent than others, and some take a bigger cut than others. So it's not a fun game to be in when they go like, oh, you should take let's say 700 kroner because that's a great rate for you, and then they charge a left client. So how do you make sure that you, together with a broker, kind of are transparent and are aware of, okay, what is the client paying and what is my share of that? So because that's my hourly rate at the end. So it is a
But how?
discussion that I really like to have.
But in that so transparency, yeah, is a big thing, definitely in
Yeah.
our world, because it's not really regulated. So having a relationship with a broker that's transparent generally solves a lot of issues. But how do you know when that broker's like pushing you and saying, "Listen, but what is your rate?" Yeah, how do you deal with that scenario? And also like on the business level, yeah, you say you're constantly kind of reviewing. How are you thinking? How do you kind of find out what other people are charging? Like, how do you go about this?
I can start.
Yeah, Jacob.
First of all, if a broker tries to push me, we all started somewhere, just to be fair, and I've learned this the hard way. If a broker tries to push me today, I'm just simply saying no. It's not an assignment for me, because I've made my budget. I need to save up for vacation. I know roughly how many days a year I can work, and I need to save for pension and sick days and so on. So I have my budget, and I know what my hourly rate has to be. Everything I can get on top of that is just nice, fine, luxury, and a bigger savings. Because I know when I say bigger savings, tax will take a lot of it when it comes to that. But that's the way I do it. So I've had one contract where I actually talked to my client, my colleagues, my freelance colleagues, one of them, I realized I was not just cheaper, but I was way fucking cheaper than my colleagues. And I got really, really frustrated because my broker, he gave me a story that's clearly not real life and how it is. So we had a talk regarding my next contract at the same client, and I needed to raise my prices, and I wanted to raise my prices, and we found something in the middle because it was a fairly high price gap we had there.
Yeah.
So we figured it out, and then that was my last contract with that client. So yes,
could be. Are you asking? Do you know when you go on new assignments, you see other freelancers, or even freelancers kind of in your network that you know? Are you asking them? Yeah, is it a transparent world between you all?
For me, it's a transparent. I don't keep things. It's not a secret from my part. It is. We can always discuss. Should we discuss prices and so on due to the konkurrenceklausulen we have in Denmark, in EU, and so on. But to be fair, I'm working with people, and if they ask me, I'm not afraid to say it because it's something we need to talk openly about. And to be fair, I haven't worked with Chris, so I don't know how he works. But different companies, they have a fixed hourly rate at a client, and let's say you have an hourly rate. They have an hourly rate with our client. That's 1,200 Danish kroner, and they pay, and you're only getting 600 kroner. They will get half, and that's the fixed. So as long as they can keep you low, they will get more. And it's not because I don't want my brokers to make money. As long as I get what I want, I'm satisfied. It's that simple. So
what, even if the broker was charging double?
Yeah, I don't give a shit. Sorry,
really?
I don't give a shit. As long as I get
what I want. You've sworn already. Don't worry about it.
I have my budget, and as long as I get what I want, I don't want to be greedy. Of course, at some point, if I figured out I'm working for 850 in this contract and they'll give 7,000 kroner an hour, maybe I think I will comment on it. But
well, Jakob,
I'd be pissed way better than you are, Jakob. You're a good man.
What kind of your thoughts on this, Nikolai?
Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why I prefer, sorry, Chris, not to work with brokers, because this one get very, and I've seen, unfortunately, I've seen so many situations where there's actually no transparency. I even heard people lie about we only add on 20%, and then suddenly I see the invoice and there's more. So I have very little trust, but that is also with normal employees. It's not only brokers, it's also normal employees. I think you have to, as Jacob said, you have to make it clear about yourself, what your price is, and then you kind of have to make a decision. How important is transparency for you? Because you have to remember that it's not only about how much they're paying, what the expectation is also different. If I'm having like 2,000 kroner an hour, the expectation will be different if I'm having 900 kroner hours. It just, at least that's my experience. I experienced something, especially when there has been McKinsey people and stuff like that on the projects with very high-end consultants. The experience or the expectation is so different. So for me, transparency is very important. Even also if it means that I will not get the highest contract. Transparency, it's so important. I want to know what I'm delivering. Otherwise, I will never be a success. That's my problem.
Sonny, what are your thoughts around kind of charge rates, transparency with brokers, dealing direct with clients? What's your opinion on all these?
Well, I think I just have a little bit this thing. If my gut feeling is that this, because it's not only a question, the project is not only a question about the salary. It's also, there's a lot of other things. If it appealing the team, the project, stuff like that, I'm willing to lower my hourly rate because that's equally important for me. So basically, I just go where I feel that this is fine for me, and that's it. But of course, as Nikolai says, if you're working with a broker that charge a lot and you don't know about it, that creates expectations at the customer that you're not aware of, and this sometimes could create issues. But basically, if I feel happy about it, it's fine for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it's a really interesting point that you're charging what 800 and the broker's charging you for 1,200, but you feel like you're delivering on an 800 level. Yeah,
Can
so
I
it's
can I
really interesting that.
can I add a comment? Two things. Sometimes I actually my this contract I'm working on right now, my broker asked me how much is your hourly rate, and I say I'll take this, I'll work for this here. Then she said, okay, we can do that, and then I just said as a funny remark, but you can always pay me more, and she did. Just to be fair, she just raised my hourly rate. It's not by much, but it was okay. I actually was pretty surprised about that one because I've never seen that one coming.
That's
Well,
a keeper.
Yeah, that's a
it's
keeper.
a
And
keeper, but just think about that. You've literally,
exactly.
you're happy.
And,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah, it's fairly simple for her because they
Yeah.
have the markup, and as long as they are in the range that they need to make. And then there is a question from an anonymous user here. He says, it's super interesting. Thank you, guys. In your experience, what is a reasonable range for rates for freelancers within 5, 10, or 20 plus years of experience? First of all, as I mentioned, make a budget covering insurance and everything. And just to be fair, it's not about how many years you worked as a developer or something. It's how much value you can actually add to the given team and the given project. That's what sets your range, your price range. So for me, it's a combination of those two things.
I'm conscious of time, and we've actually not had the opportunity to answer some of the questions. By the way, anyone's asked a question, we'll endeavour to. We've got a LinkedIn group for people in Denmark looking to freelance, and so what we'll end up doing is answering those questions in there. So even if you feel your question hasn't been answered yet, we will endeavour to make sure we do answer that at some point. Okay, and then I suppose, have you got any kind of final tips? Yeah, and I go around the table. So Nikolai, any final tips for people thinking about it? Anything we've not discussed that you feel like we should discuss?
I did one thing that kind of saved my life, even though I didn't know it. That is that in my calendar, I have once every quarter a very big alarm saying now it's time to do sales, Nick, or something like that. Uh, which means that this is the time. And when I say sales, I don't try cold calling or stuff like that because that never worked. What I do is everyone that I worked with professionally, I try to keep a track on so that I call them once every quarter and say, hi, how is it going? What are you working on? Blah, blah, blah. And it's the only thing I have about this, it has to be people that I enjoyed working with. And that one call once a quarter, I mean, it takes like 8 hours or something. It's an exhausting day. But the value that I gotten back, because suddenly I'm top of mind and they remember, oh, when I like working with them, they probably also thought that I was nice working with and I had something that they couldn't do, especially about databases. But anyway, so this way, when they're in the projects, suddenly hits a roadblock or something, they will remember me. So every 3 months, if you're considering this way, make a call, and it can be a very personal call. It doesn't have to be anything with business. I don't care. I just want to put my name in top of their mind. We had a nice professional relationship. You could get that again. And then I call them again after. No one had ever said, no, I do not want to talk with you. You're an idiot. Not yet, at least.
Yes,
So
make sure if you're taking Nikolai's call tomorrow, make sure you start with that, please.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What about yourself, Jakob? Any other tips? Anything that needs mentioning that we've not mentioned?
Yeah, I don't do it like Nikolai does, but I can support his way of doing. And selling is a big part of it, to be fair, from us. But overall, I know I can be a complete asshole sometimes, especially because I'm a developer, so everything is more or less black and white and ones and zeros and so on. But be nice. You will get really, really far, but be nice and doing the work. So.
Great advice there. Robert?
Yeah, I think for me, as someone who moved to Denmark, I think it's difficult to know the market. There's a lot of unknowns for you as a person starting out in a new country. So I would say talk to other freelancers, reach out. If people are curious, they can always connect on LinkedIn, with me. I'm not sure about the others, but I think that's a good way to kind of get a feeling about things you don't know, or join groups like the one you mentioned to come LinkedIn, and potentially talk to a broker as well. So even though you're not a freelancer yet, I think it could help to a broker about, okay, what kind of opportunities do you think there are for my profile? I have 5 years experience, I have 10 years experience, I do this and this. Is that something that's realistic or not? So just to get some I think some uncertainties away when starting. And personally, like as a freelancer, whenever I'm at a client, I just want to make sure that the team I work with, that they do well, and that kind of, my boss looks good, because then they're happy, and then I can keep working there probably. So, be a team player. Don't try to prove yourself too much, but just, do your job, be friendly and open and collaborative. And I believe that from there, things will work out just fine.
Perfect. Sonny, any final thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit in the slipstream of what you said there. Unless you're asked to change things when you start in a new position, don't. Just take some time to figure out how people are working and adapt to that. And don't try to, just enforce your things. Like we all try to have colleagues like that just land and change things around. I mean, unless you're asked to do that, don't do it, because it's just going to create a bad environment, not only for you, but also for the people that are there before you came.
Perfect. Any final thoughts from anyone? There we go. Yeah,
I muted my mic. There's a question from one of the viewers, and there's actually a good one. Tips on avoiding conflicts where internal employees feel defensive when you bring your experience. As I said to other freelance consultants, and I actually said it to internal people also, I'm a guest. When I get to a company, I'm a guest. They pay me to be there and to do my job and to do something. They need to fix something they need help with. I can share my experience, but if they don't want to listen, it's in the end, it's their product, it's their company. I can only say what I think, and then if they don't buy it, I just have to pull back and say, okay, I said what I did, we'll do you once.
Good advice. So hopefully you can see at the bottom there, I put a link to our Copenhagen Tech Freelancer Networking group on LinkedIn. We're going to, like I said, answer all the questions that we've not managed to get through. Apart from that, I put some details. If you are looking for freelancer and you don't want to just connect with one of these guys directly, if you do want to use a broker, feel free to reach out. I'll put the details below. That's my email. If you want to send me a funny meme instead, feel free to do so. Apart from that, just a massive thanks to everyone on the panel today. Really appreciate your time. The LinkedIn URLs will be below the podcast, and you can actually connect with these guys if you look on the event that you've connected to. So make sure you connect with them and look out for that quarterly call from Nikolai. And yeah, big shout. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Sonny. Thank you, Jakob. Thank you, Nikolai. Absolute pleasure, and really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
See you later, everyone.
Bye.